Delighted to be joined now by Wayne Larden, who is the CEO of Pont3 and the race director for the Sydney Marathon. And Wayne, 2 decades, I believe it is, since starting Pont3 and gaining the rights to what is now the world's 7th major marathon. As someone who has ran, personally me, the last 2 Sydney marathons in glorious sunshine, it's been quite enjoyable beyond the obvious challenges of running a marathon. But for you, I dare say the emotions have perhaps been a great deal more. How did you find Sunday 2 weeks ago now on the 31st?
It was just fantastic. You're right. We were really lucky with the weather. Sunny, nice, cool, still weather compared to what we'd had in Sydney for sort of 2 months previous. We were relieved on race morning or the week before when it started to, the sun started to come out. But yeah, of course, a lot of work has gone into the candidacy years of becoming an Abbott World Marathon Major. And obviously there were a lot of changes that needed to happen to meet the qualifying standards at 104-point criteria 2 years in a row. And you would have noticed, probably having run it, a couple of times, the significant changes that we had to implement and did implement. Race day was just awesome. That whole race week, we set about, making sure that we engaged with our runners from the time they hopped off the plane until the time we sent them home, and, setting things off on the Thursday morning with the press conference and the huge amount of media we had there, which we've never had before, was really, really a great start to the week. But the Friday night event was what really started things for us and our team, and gave us a sense of the vibe that we would have on the Sunday when, we launched the Meet the Stars night. And the purpose of Meet the Stars was to provide a free event for participants to come and be part of the marathon ecosystem, an official event that they could come along to, in a beautiful location at the forecourt of the Sydney Opera House, and meet some of the great athletes that we brought out to race on the Sunday. And, I thought it would be popular. And when I got out of the car and walked down that finish chute and I saw the crowds on the edge of the finish straight, I thought, great, this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. Good crowds. And then I kept walking and got through to the actual finish line and saw the entire Opera House, staircase full of people, and the noise and excitement that was there. And that just really set things off. And I thought that was just a great show. And it was good because it was free, it was for them, it was official. But the main purpose was to, let our mass participants who see these great international athletes on TV, or they see them in interviews or podcasts or, magazines or whatever, let them get to know these athletes as people. And, Sifan and Elliot couldn't have been better. They were just really open and honest, and the crowd enjoyed the conversation that we had with them. And I just thought it brought the everyday runner a lot closer to the elite athletes, and it let them know that they're just real people who face their own trials and tribulations and challenges with their marathons, just the same as everyone else does. So that was a great start to the week and to the weekend. And then Saturday, first time 5K mini marathon on, with the Opera House finish all set up for them. That was really nice. Popular, big numbers, everyone was happy, and it was a nice little warm-up for us. It got us in the zone, ready for the big show on the Sunday. Sunday itself, it went amazingly well. Like the amount of positive feedback that we've had from, all corners of the globe, and, various government agencies, and our own Pont3 team and officials and volunteers has been overwhelmingly positive. So, it was great to get it done. It was great to get our first one out as an Abbott World Marathon Major. And there wasn't nerves there. There was excitement, a little anxiety, not too much, but we had good plans in place, and we knew we'd deliver a good event, and we did. So, when that last run across the finish line at about 3:20, 3:30 in the afternoon, it was just an amazing sense of relief that we'd done it. And, we got there and got our first one out, and, we're on the road, and so it was really amazing.
Beautiful to hear, mate. And yeah, congratulations on the day, but no doubt enormous work from you and all your team, not just in the past 12 months, but like you said, in the two candidacy years in the lead up, but no doubt prior. I would love to know, when you took over the race 20 years ago, what was the vision? Because you mentioned there Eliud Kipchoge, Safan Hassan, probably the two biggest names to ever come out and run in this country. You know, Safan goes on and wins the race in the women's. Eliud, obviously still a great competitive runner, but maybe not quite at the winning level these days, obviously in his 40s now. But when you took that over, you know, Eliud's a teenager, Safan even younger. You know, I'm 32 myself. I get to benefit from what is now an incredible event on my doorstep. And I'm someone from Melbourne. I've moved up here and been living now in Sydney. So I get to benefit from what is a lot of brilliant work from the likes of yourself, and no doubt many others who will probably never get the kudos that they deserve in that sense. But for you, what was that vision? Did you think it could become a World Abbott Major back, you know, in the mid 2000s post the Sydney Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I made that comment in the press conference. As a quarter of a century of work has gone into getting us into the Abbott World Marathon Majors. And originally, in 2004, I was asked to consult to the previous organisers to lift the event because it was really stagnant. There was only about 1,200 runners in the marathon, and you know, shutting down a city the size of Sydney for 1,200 marathon runners for 6 hours is a challenge, and it's not something that sort of warrants that sort of impact on the non-running community. So I did consult to the previous organisers, and I went out and had a look at the race in 2004, having been a runner in a previous life, and you know, running a few world championships, having been in the sponsorship world, working for AMP on the Olympics, and you know, and been involved in event management since 1993. When I went out and had a look at the event in 2004, you know, what I saw was something that could be truly amazing. You know, it had all of the, you know, ingredients that would be required to make it into an incredible international marathon, but it just needed to be delivered better. It needed consistent delivery, it needed growth. It needed a bit of consolidation of, you know, finishes and things like this. But now I knew straight away this event could be something truly special. I ended up acquiring the rights the following year in 2005, and that's when I founded Pont3. And, you know, it took me, 18 years to grow it from when I took it over, 12 or 1,300 in the marathon to 5,300. And it took us 3 years to grow it from 5,300 to, you know, nearly 34,000 in the marathon. So it did take me a little bit longer than I thought to get to where I knew it would be one day. But I always knew it would become something truly special if given, you know, the right amount of love and attention and focus and vision and everything else. So I've believed in it since day one, no question. So, you know, it's just fantastic to see that come to life, and for Sydney and Australia to have their own Abbott World Marathon Major with the TCS Sydney Marathon, you know, here on their doorstep is incredible. It's an incredible opportunity, and the impact, you know, will be felt for decades.
Beautifully said. I guess I would love now if we could touch on you saying it could be felt for decades, and I certainly see that as well. The length of time that it took to get to even, yeah, like you said, there 5.5 odd thousand, but then it's made an enormous leap in these last few years. I would love to know what you put that down to, because we could talk about maybe there's a running boom. Obviously, there's a big rise in run clubs, but a lot of people getting into running, you know, 5 years ago around COVID. But for you, I'm sure a lot of the work that has been done in those 18 years has enabled these last few years to happen, right? And it's the same thing that we could say with the literal fact of running a marathon, right? You can't expect to go out and run a time and not completely blow up if you haven't done the work prior. So to be able to do what you've done, I would like to think has come a lot from those 18 years. But yeah, what do you think maybe changed as it got closer to sort of this past 12 to 24 months?
Look, you're right. I mean, I sort of treat it like an elite athlete. Like, high performance is high performance, whether you're a runner or whether you're organizing an event. And, if you want to be successful in anything, you do have to have a vision. You got to believe in it. You've also got to have the right team around you, and you've got to perform consistently over many years. Now that, delivering a marathon involves a bunch of different stakeholders. And I think the formative years, the way we delivered and the way we consistently delivered the event well, the operational excellence that the team has, and, sticking to what we said we'd do, what that provided was confidence in terms of the New South Wales government and their, them knowing that we have the ability to deliver, a World Majors event, and that we'd proven ourselves. So that's one part of it, because, we wouldn't have even started on the Abbott World Marathon Majors journey if we didn't have the support of New South Wales government, first and foremost. And that's not just from a funding perspective. That's from an agency integration, and support perspective too, because there's so many agencies that contribute to delivering the event. Now, sort of winding that forward a little bit to, when we became a candidate race, there were a couple of key points within the criteria that we thought we would have real problems with. One of those was the finisher numbers, and essentially we were required to triple our finisher numbers, right, in 1 year, and then do it again the next year to actually get the 2 years in a row. So we thought that would be one of our biggest challenges, and that needs to be taken in context of the traditional participation sort of levels in marathon running in Australia prior to COVID. And, in Australia, which is quite different and unique to the rest of the world, the bucket list for running in Australia pre-COVID was half marathon and City to Surf, right? That was it. And there were three majors, or three big marathon festival events in Australia, still is, Sydney, Melbourne and Gold Coast, right? And we all had, between 12 and 16,000 people running in our half marathons. So there were a lot of runners running pre-COVID, but they just weren't running the marathon, right? Now, so that was promising. So we thought, okay, we can work with that. We had a little bit of fun with that. Our marketing team and myself came up with some good fun Aussie style, humorous ways of challenging the norm and getting people to, why run a half when you can do a full, and why do half of anything, this sort of thing. Just challenging the mindset of the traditional runners. And that was one aspect to bringing those people on the journey and lifting them back, up into the real bucket list, which is the marathon. And yes, you're right. The signing of the candidacy agreement just before the 2021 event was just out of COVID. And, we do know, and it's well documented, that a lot of people started running during COVID to keep fit because they couldn't go to their gyms or whatever other form of exercise they used to do, or maybe they didn't exercise and they were home at a lot more and they weren't working or whatever, and took up running. And that was great too. So coming out of COVID, all of these people who had been running, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, they've fallen in love with running, and they wanted to join clubs, and the run clubs then at that time found their real position within the running community, and they played a really important role in providing a new way of engaging with runners and new runners. And it was far more social than the pre-COVID. It was running clubs, right? You had a few recreational run clubs that weren't sort of track and field based running clubs, but out of COVID, the growth of Unofficial, Coogee, all of these other run clubs that provided not just a group to run with, but a social interaction and built communities that were really positive, fun, social and regular. And it then fulfilled a lot of other things, I think, for people out of COVID too. You know, you didn't need to go to the pub to meet people who were like-minded and enjoyed doing things that you like doing. So, you know, if you put those two things together, you know, that meant that in the end, the biggest challenge we thought we would have, that being finisher numbers, was actually one of the easiest.
Yeah.
And we hit numbers and we hit growth really quickly. And that was evident, you know, you would have seen in finisher numbers that we've had in the last few years and now. But so it was a bit of a combination of things, I think. But yeah, run clubs certainly, getting traditional runners back on the road and focused on the marathon really helped. Some of the other challenges, you know, which would normally be really difficult in a city like Sydney, like fundamental changes to courses. You know, traditionally we had quite a condensed footprint, and we would have to go sort of doing this sort of thing to get distance. So we minimize the impact on the non-running community, still have a marathon, but you're getting all of these out and backs and things like that. And like the first year when the assessors came out, they said, this won't do. You know, you can't have a world major where you're going like that. One, no one will like it. Two, the course won't handle the number of people that you're going to have once you become an Abbott World Marathon Major. So, you know, being able to negotiate fundamental changes and extensions of impacts on the non-running community traditionally is really tough. Moving the start line from Bradfield Park back to the Olympic origin, the North Sydney start line, which is just beautiful. These sorts of things don't happen easily in any other city, except for the fact that we had such great buy-in from the New South Wales government and Destination New South Wales, and all of the government agencies bought into the vision of TCS Sydney Marathon becoming an Abbott World Marathon Major, and everyone just worked so well together to achieve it. And it was just, you know, I'd never experienced that level of support. We always had support, but this shared vision that everyone had in bringing the majors to Sydney was what made, you know, the biggest difference. And not just with agencies, it was the runners too. It's like that whole, the sort of third part, which I didn't mention before, was this, what? We can have an Abbott World Marathon Major here. It's like, you know what Aussies are like? We're competitive. We want to be the best. Like, we want to be up there with the best. And the thought of, okay, if we do Sydney and we support Sydney in candidacy years, we'll have an Abbott World Marathon Major in Sydney. That excited a lot of people too. So there's all these elements that, you know, went into achieving, you know, the criteria, and, you know, like 2 weeks ago, bringing the Abbott World Marathon Majors to Sydney.
Beautiful stuff. All of that is things that I would have touched on and asked, but you've answered it perfectly there, Wayne. So thank you. I guess if we could go a little bit deeper into the impacts of the running community, and it's interesting you saying as part of the process, needing to essentially stretch the course out. Myself, I found it quite challenging on the Sunday at about the 23-kilometre mark when you turn us around out at Kingsford just before sort of Maroubra. I thought we were sort of heading to for a moment. I was getting a bit delusional there, but there were so many pockets on the course that just had so many more people supporting, especially that turnaround point. There would have been, from my memory, a couple of hundred, maybe at least 100 people right at that corner, which when you're that far out in a marathon, you have to say maybe those people aren't there necessarily supporting anyone in particular, but they're just out on the course supporting in general because they know that there's a huge event being on. And running 2024 and this year 2025, I noticed a huge uptake in the crowds that were out there. So I guess not only the running community getting involved, and I say running community not just here in Sydney, but I know friends who traveled from all over the country to come, whether they were running or spectating, but also people that were just Sydney locals getting out on the course and seeing some of the world greats. I'm sure that was very filled you with pride, I should say. Very, very happy for you. But what, from your point of view, does this do for the running community, not only in Sydney, but then in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, the course, the crowds was, and that's another big sort of change this year. And that was probably, once we became an Abbott World Marathon Major, the biggest difference, other than the number of finishes that the other World Majors have, is, or was, the number of people out there spectating on the course. And that's a bit of a slow burn. That will continue to pick up. But there was a very deliberate strategy we put in place to try and improve that. And recruiting Eliud Kipchoge and Sifan Hassan were sort of the key element to to building those crowds on the course. And what we did know is that if we signed both of those athletes from the second they got off the plane in Sydney, the Australian media would be swarming all over them. Every news channel on every network would feature a story on Eliud, on Sifan, on the event, reinforcing that the TCS Sydney Marathon is on the 31st of August on the streets of Sydney, and it will be your once in a lifetime, maybe, opportunity to see the two greatest marathon runners of all time running through the streets of Sydney. Now, we knew that the media would grab that. We knew then all of Sydney and all of Australia would know this, right? And we believed that would help bring people out of their houses onto the sidelines to show their kids the greatest runners of all time running through the streets of Sydney. And it worked. The media were all over those guys the whole week. And not just them, like the wheelchair athletes, Hoog and Scaroni, and we had the greatest wheelchair field in the world, one of the greatest marathon fields in the world, certainly the greatest we've ever had here. And the crowds were huge. The course did help with that, like extending down into Anzac Parade, further into Randwick, Kingsford. You're getting into areas where there's residential housing, and people can easily get to the side of the course, as opposed to earlier years where you're doing loops inside Centennial Park where nobody lives, and therefore there's no crowds for long periods of the race. So the course change certainly helped with that. Moving further toward impact, and running has some really powerful benefits to individuals who take part in running. But there's a thing in the industry they call a ripple effect, and the ripple effect is, what is the impact that a marathon has, or marathon or any event really, but in this case a marathon? What's the impact of that on the people who take part? So that's sort of obvious. You've got physical and mental well-being and health benefits relating to just running, just being healthier, and what that does for your mind and your body, and they're well documented benefits. There's community benefits, such as economic impact, and the early survey results we've got coming back now through our participant survey are showing an incredible jump in economic impact, which we will report on soon. But people will be dumbfounded by the amount of money that was spent in businesses in Sydney during race week. Even I think the government will be surprised, but I certainly was. I knew it would get to that, but where it's looking like being this year, it's just incredible. But when you think about the ripple effect of people who train for a marathon, so say for example members of Unofficial, the establishment of the Sydney Muslim Run Club, right? Any other run clubs where running is being introduced to communities that haven't been involved in running before, and it's having new impacts in communities that you just wouldn't have seen before if it wasn't for the inspiration that the people who they know are taking part and completing a marathon, doing something truly special. And the ripple effect is the impact that has on your brother, your mother, your cousin, your friends, and them seeing what you've done, and the important role you as a runner has to play in spreading the word and spreading the fundamental benefits of running to a broader community. And that has a steamroll effect. So anyone in a community run club, or any of the Unofficials, or Muslim Run Club, or Coogee Run Club, or they all have a role in this ripple effect, whether they know it or not. They're inspiring people who haven't run before, and they go, "Did you see John? He did the marathon. He's only been running 2 years. Incredible." look how fit he is, look how happy he is, or whatever. And that ripple effect, just keeps growing and growing. And then all of a sudden, the number of people who are enjoying the benefits of running, mental, physical, and community benefits of running, building communities, giving people who maybe didn't have a big friend group, but they found a running group and they found their place and they're happy, and they're fitter and healthier. I think the ripple effect in terms of community benefit, health, well-being, and building connected communities is probably, if not as important, I actually think it's more important than the economic impact of a marathon. And everyone has a role to play in this ripple effect in building the participation in running and health and well-being, because you all know it. You benefit from it. You love it. You go every week. You have fun with your friends. You have a coffee. You go to work happy. You want to go back. And this is a sort of steamroll ripple effect that running can have, and that these run clubs can have on broader communities. And I think that's really a truly amazing and powerful, benefit of running and of the TCS Sydney Marathon and of all the run clubs that are out there connected to our event, and what they can do out in their broader communities as individuals. And I think that's important. And believe me, whether you think it or not, you do inspire people. People look at you and go, wow, that's incredible. Whether you're running for a charity or just for yourself, they see it. And that can inspire people. And I love that.
Love that. I feel the passion coming through. I appreciate it so much. I feel like we need to get you in the studio for a longer chat at some point, 1 hour or so. This has been great, Wayne. I'd love to ask you one final question. I mean, where to from here? You've started, you set the bar with Kipchoge and Hassan. You alluded to maybe there earlier on. I don't know if you're hinting that maybe looking at bringing them back somehow, but I don't know if you go and try to convert Usain Bolt to becoming a marathon runner. That'll get some crowds out. Maybe Moneghetti, you get him to run next year. I don't know. He was doing different bits and pieces, but yeah, how can people support, even if they're not running? Like, where do you want the support from the community? Because this podcast, we're doing what we can, but like you said, there's lots of ways that people, if they're not running, can support the marathon, but build towards it in the coming years. Because if last Sunday was anything to go by, you're not going away anytime soon.
Well, we're not going away. You're right. The one drawback of setting the bar so high in your first year is, how do you leap over it the next year? We're thinking about that right now. You're exactly right on that.
You can take the Usain Bolt idea to your next board meeting.
Well, you know what? I actually used that analogy when I was talking to a member of the media, pre-race, months before the race. And what I said was, when Usain Bolt is running on the track, the stadium's full, right? Every time. When Eliud Kipchoge shows up, the sidelines will be full, and it was absolutely true. So yeah, we got to think long and hard about how we top what we did this year. But for people within the running community, our community, the extended community, if you don't get a spot, we'll be opening our ballot soon. So you got to make sure you keep an eye on our website for when that ballot opens. So that's really important. So that's step one if you want to run next year, if you don't have a candidacy spot. Step two, and importantly, is we love more people out there cheering on the sidelines. If you can't run, go out and support those friends and family or people you don't know who are out there running, doing something really special. If you don't get a spot and you want to run, there's also good impact you can have with charities, running for a charity. It's running for something special. I just love to see the community build. It's just such a great community too, Rin. It's like, they're just so supportive and happy and friendly, and it's just a really positive, movement of people, and movement spiritually, physically, and in all ways. So, I just love it. I love running. Running's given me a lot. I intend to give a lot more back to running and the community. So if you don't run, get out there on the sidelines. And if you can influence and change the life of somebody else, getting them running, start walking with them. Take a little bit of time out of your day. Go to a school and talk to some kids about running and the benefits of that. Spread the word, spread the love, and get more people out there being healthy, being happy, enjoying the transformative power of running, and just keep this whole thing moving, because it's really it's truly special, and it's, you know, it's going to grow and it's going to have impact forever.
I love it, mate. Well, I look forward to seeing how you raise the bar again next year. I know you send out the surveys, and don't get me wrong, absolutely loved it. But if you could do watermelon at the finish line, I reckon you'd box it completely. I know it's probably hard to organize watermelon for 35,000 people, if not more, next year. But that would certainly be one thing from my end. But Wayne, thank you so much for joining me on the Never Run Alone podcast. I appreciate your time. Appreciate all the work you've done, as I said at the top, not just in the past couple of years, but since I was back. I was 7 years of age in 2000 when the Olympics was on. I was, you know, barely a teenager when you took over the right. So thank you. And I look forward to contributing from what I can do, and no doubt helping influence others moving forward. So appreciate your time.
You're welcome, mate. Good to be on. Cheers, mate.